What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the third part of the series of the PV Masterclass. We got Shannon Poe and Jere Clements here. What's going on, fellas? This this third episode is going to be Lode Mining Explained. So make sure you grab yourself a beverage, something to eat, sit down, and listen. You got very good educational stuff going on this evening. So with that being said, Shannon, you want to go ahead and take it from here, brother man? Very good educational stuff going on this evening. So with that being said, Shannon, you want to go ahead? Uh-oh.
Getting kind of a loop feedback there.
Uh-oh. I think we're good now. Oh, that's on one of you guys.
I got nothing else running.
That's on one of you guys. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's Shannon, I think that's coming from you, brother man.
How is that possible? All I got is
I'm muting mine for a second.
Yeah, I think that is can you hear an echo there, Jerry?
Well, yeah, it's faint in the background, but it's not horrible.
Well, that is not good. All right.
So I muted mine, and it still came across. I could still hear you echoing. So
well, that is not good. That is not good at all. All right. So what I'll do is I'll kick myself out, kick myself back in, and then see if we got her solved. Let's go from there. All right, is that any better?
Maybe. Yeah.
Should be good.
Yep.
Thanks, StreamYard. Sorry about that, guys.
no.
Thanks, StreamYard, for my subscription that I pay monthly. Appreciate it. Thanks, StreamYard.
Oh, no, it's back.
Oh, it's back. Oh, well, that is just not good. Jeez Louise. Why is that doing that? Yeah, that's definitely StreamYard. Well, let's see here. Yeah, let's see. Maybe, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry about that, guys. I apologize. For whatever reason, we are getting a delay. I don't know where it's coming from. I think it's coming from my microphone, yet I have nothing else other than my microphone that's playing. Don't know what's going on here. What's going on, Rob? What's going on, Christina? Can you still hear the echo there, Jerry?
I don't think so. Maybe it was Shannon.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was assuming. I don't have anything else playing here on my end that, yeah, Shrimp Road says it's the BLM. Yes, it is. All right, let's see here. What's going on, Robert Lee? How you doing, brother man? Let's see. Let's go ahead and drop this link for Shannon one more time. Just bear with us here. We're having a bit of technical difficulties. And what's funny is we actually came on a half hour early
Yeah, we're fine.
to go over audio and video and had no problems. So, yeah, gotta love it. I tell you what. Let's see here. Copy. Get that sent over to him. How are you guys doing this evening? Go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know how you guys are doing. How's the weather like over where you guys are at? I know it's been 40 degrees over here during the day, 20 degrees during the morning when I have to work. Get home, it's decently warm, and yet I'm sleeping, trying to catch up on sleep. That's typically how it works. All right, let's see here. See if we can get Shannon back in. He says, mine pulled up live. Rob McGuire says the echo is gone. Mr. Shannon was the culprit.
Yeah, he always is.
He is always the culprit. Hey, Shannon, you were the culprit, brother.
Yeah, I must have been. I don't know why that was. It was kind of weird. Even when I bailed out, I could still hear you guys talking. It was kind of weird. Anyway, it's all good now.
Anywho, yeah, go ahead and take it from here, Mr. Shannon. Let's get her done, brother.
So we kind of want to start out basically kind of talking a little bit about the differences between placer and lode mining. And again, we want to make sure that you guys understand that lode is spelled Lode, not Load. It's just kind of a pet peeve of ours. So if you're going to be a lode miner, at least you should be able to spell it correctly. So Lode. So lode mining refers to really gold that is in its natural environment, meaning that it's in situ in a quartz vein that's still in the ground, and not something like placer where it has been eroded out of that vein, washed down the hill with rain or whatever type of weather, and then into a creek, into a river, and you find, rounded nuggets down in a crack somewhere in the bedrock in a river. That's placer mining. So lode mining is really can be a couple of different ways. It can be surface mining, and last year, Jerry and Don, we actually had a lode mine that we surfaced mined, and we had to get a permit, and we'll talk about that in a little later in the segment here. But basically, the vein that was carrying the high grade ore was relatively flat, and that's extremely rare that you have a vein that runs flat. Normally, they're pretty severely tipped. On average, about 45 to 60 degrees, and can even be steeper than that. But this one was relatively flat, and it outcropped. It literally came and surfaced, and we chased that down in what, Jerry, a 200-foot by 150-foot area, roughly.
I just turned around in there yesterday and didn't have to back up. So
Yeah,
it's a good
but
circle.
What we did is we took an excavator and we dug down until we actually could hear and feel the teeth hit the quartz vein, which was anywhere from about that thick all the way really to a couple of feet thick.
Jeez.
And it was mostly quartz. It was very what we call vuggy, meaning that it had open pockets inside there that were created by gas, and then it formed crystals inside there. So the girls loved it because we would bust these giant slabs of quartz in half, and there would be bugs with crystals everywhere. As a matter of fact, Lisa's got some of them on her desk. But so we would scrape all the overburden, which was basically slate and albite, or albite. They call it albite in Mariposa County. And we would scrape that back, and then we would get in there and we would pop these big slabs of quartz that carried the gold out of that vein, throw them into a dump trailer or dump truck, backhoe bucket, whatever. We would take them back to the shop, to the property, and we would crush them. But most of the time for lode mining, you're going to probably be tunneling underground, and that brings in a whole lot of dangers, as you guys can imagine. And some of these old mines, there's a multitude of ways that can kill you. One is falling rocks in the ceiling coming down, or, you go in there and it's got really bad air. And we've been in mines that have had both of those kinds of dangers. Fortunately for us, the mine that we're working right now is incredibly stable. And, we've had it for a very long time, and we've never even had a single rock, not even a little tiny fragment of a rock, come out of the ceiling. So it's pretty hard stuff. But, people, and I know the people listening to this right now are excited, hey, I want to get a lode mine and I want to go get all this ore. There's a whole lot of things that you got to think about before you start lode mining. One is anytime that you go underground and you're doing any type of an operation really has to involve MSHA, which is the Mine Safety and Health Administration. And they're really not bad guys. They're not like some of these Forest Service entities out there that really just despise mining. Most of the people that work for MSHA are miners. And so they're pretty pro mining. And to be honest with you, in the 10 years or so that AMRA's been around, we've never had to field any complaint, question, or anything about MSHA. As a matter of fact, we have a very good buddy of ours that just retired from MSHA that we've learned an awful lot about, and a really good guy. And I don't know of any problems with MSHA. So, but you have to.
Excuse me. Go for it, Shannon. Yeah,
Was that Britney Spears?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I got a funny story about that ringtone. We'll get to it here in a little bit. It's about marriage. That's a whole different ballgame. So.
My ringtone is the good, the bad, and the ugly. But anyway, so you have to understand about MSHA, and to take that even a step further is they have requirements that you have to be able to notify somebody if there's an emergency at the mine. And like where we're fortunate where we're at right now, and we actually get a cell signal. But there's another mine that we have called the Stacy Nicole that runs about 6 ounces per ton, and we'll talk about that breakdown, which is extremely rich. It's way down in the bottom of the canyon, and it has bad air in the back of the mine, but not in the front where we found the high grade pay. So what do you have to do? Well, if in order to meet the MSHA requirements, you're going to have a sat phone or something like that, and to be able so that people can respond to those type of emergencies and stuff. And I'll be honest here. I think the vast majority of people ignore the requirements of MSHA, and that's an individual choice. I don't even know what the penalties are. So, we try to comply with as much as we can, with all of these different types of regulations and stuff. MSHA was created because an awful lot of people have been killed mining.
Right.
I was gonna say a lot of the a lot of the things that you have to abide by with them are things that are going to save your life.
Air monitors and things like that. And it really makes perfect sense,
Right.
Because the problem is if you go into a mine that has really bad air, you won't even know that you died, because you're just going to be walking along talking, and the next thing you know, you're pass out and you die. And so,
right.
It's not cool.
Get an air monitor.
Yeah, you need an air monitor. We actually, in some of the mines that we go into, we carry it's actually about that big. It's an oxygen canister that a buddy of ours gave us a few of these, and you throw it in your backpack and you can go in. If you get into a situation where all of a sudden your monitor goes out and you feel a little lightheaded, you can take a couple of shots of this oxygen, and it'll probably save your life. But by the time your sensor goes off, it's time to leave, like right now.
Right.
And sensors aren't cheap either. They range. You could probably find a used one for $500, but they go all the way up into the thousands.
Well, if you're getting into lode mining, it might be more expensive, to get all of these things established, air monitor and whatever else you need. But if you're getting into lode mining, then you should have the investment to be able to get all of those things for safety precautions.
Yep.
You don't want to half-ass anything you do with lode mining. I've spoken with Rob quite a bit about it, and, he's told me multiple scary stories with situations he's been in. And, instead of learning over the years and near-death experiences, you need to be able to know what you're doing before you even get into lode mining. The dangers, the investment, you don't know if you will get a return. You have somewhat of a gist about it, but at the end of the day, it's like Dave has said multiple times, it's gambling. You're gambling is what you're doing essentially. And you're not gambling $10-20. You're gambling thousands of dollars for something that possibly won't have a return.
Well, and right before we went on air here, we were talking about the placer mining versus lode mining, and
right.
So to give you guys an example, I got a 6-inch ProLine dredge, which I think is the best dredge ever made on planet Earth. It really just moves some material. And
right.
She sprained my wrist many times, but we can really, really move some material, and we've gotten into some really good ground where, we've averaged 2 ounces per day, and that's a really good dredge day. I mean, sure, we've had days we've got more than that. Hell, I found a 3-ounce nugget once before, but those days are pretty rare. If you can average an ounce or even a half ounce or a quarter ounce, then you're making a little bit of money. The difference being is now a ProLine dredge is pretty expensive for a 6. I mean, they're probably $12,000. You could pick up a mining claim. We just did the series a couple of weeks ago for, a few $100. You can get that. And now you face all the regulation and all the BS that's going on in California,
right.
Oregon, Washington, all these people trying to ban it, et cetera. Lode mining doesn't have that regulatory aspect to it like the placer mining does. So realistically, let's say that you go out and you buy a used Keen 4-inch dredge for $1,000. You pick up a mining claim and you're in Colorado or somewhere. You're illegally. Well, I mean, you're dredging in California. Well, anyway, where. So let's just say that you're out dredging. You're probably a 4-inch dredge. Isn't a small dredge. You can still move some decent material and you can make a little bit of money. The difference being is if you hit if you get a lode mine and you find a high grade ore body, like what we found last year, we had, stuff was running upwards of 6 ounces per ton. The Stacy Nicole mine is running 6 ounces per ton. We can go in and pull. We were pulling, hell, you could pull 10 tons of ore a day last year, what we were doing. Now, the Stacy Nicole mine is really hard to get to. You got to take quads to get to it. And, everything's carried out by hand. You can't get any heavy equipment in there. So, we could probably pull a ton a day. Do the math on that. So that's 6 ounces a day that you're getting, using hand tools and things like that, pulling it out. Or in last year's example, as we were running a really big excavator. Actually, it was Dave Vorabioff's excavator from Gold Bay. We kind of did a little swappy on that, and the thing weighed 50,000 pounds and had a 1-yard bucket on it, so we could really move.
Jesus.
But so let's get into the costs of the equipment that's needed in order to lode mine. So we'll get into sampling and stuff like that in a little bit, but to give you guys an example is you have to, let's say that you go out and you claimed an existing lode mine that's already got a tunnel on it and at it, and you go in and it's got ventilation, everything's good to go, you don't have any problems with bad air, and you go in and you chisel a bunch of rocks out of the quartz vein that's highly mineralized in the wall, and now you have to find a way to determine if there's gold in it. And so how do you do that? Well, I was telling Jaren that the smasher that I built about, I don't know, 15 years ago, it's basically a 2-inch steel pipe, and I took a steel billet that's 3 inches thick, and it's about 9.5 inches around. So it weighs about, what, Jerry, 30 pounds? That billet?
At least
40 pounds, maybe. I built it way too big. And then we took a steel pipe, a really thick, like 1/2-inch steel pipe, and we welded a 1/2-inch steel plate to it. So it kind of looks just like a pot. So you could drop all, your little samples and stuff, and then you were lifting this 40-pound freaking bar and
human stamp mill.
Smash. But you know what? You could do that for 15 minutes and, gas yourself out. But then we were able to actually walk over to a tub and pan that out and determine if there was any gold in it.
They had to switch their tactics up because they're getting older. They're not getting any younger.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, no, what the old timers did is a mortar and pestle, and that's still legitimate. I mean, you're not going to get large volumes, but you're going to. The benefit of that is you can bring it with you, and you have instant results.
Right.
The funny thing is, the very first crushing mine in California that I've ever heard about, it's in Perlot's book, and it was built in 1850 or 1851, and it was at the Marble Springs mine, and the guys built the hammers that they were crushing ore with out of oak. Didn't work.
Although oak is thick, but yeah.
I don't think that they just didn't do very good. But anyway, so that can kind of give you an idea of, you can buy some of these different types of mortar and pestles. You could buy, smashers and stuff that they sell at gold shows.
You know what I use? I use a fence post pounder, T-post pounder, and turn it upside down. And then you use those digging bars with the round plate on the back end of them. They fit perfect in the T-post pounder.
Oh, there you go.
It works great.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yep.
So we upgraded a couple of years ago, really when we partnered up with Sparky, with Don, and who's probably sitting in his camper tonight because we're mining right now. We've been running the dozer all day.
Yeah.
But Don picked up, was another fellow miner that had passed away, and his wife was selling off his mining equipment. And it was a 10-foot long flatbed trailer. And on there was what's called a chipmunk. And it's a little tiny 3-inch jaw crusher. It's only that wide. And, you can only put a rock, about that size in it.
Right.
But it was kind of cool because then you could fill up a couple of bags, sandbags. We carry sandbags because they're really easy to carry. Screw buckets. Tie up the sandbags. You can label them. You can write on them. You know exactly where they come from. You can label on the wall inside the mine. And so those coordinate. So you know exactly what you're getting. So that chipmunk crushes the rocks, the bigger rocks, down into about what we call 1/4 inch minus. So then it goes into about 1/4 of an inch, about like that, and it drops down into basically kind of a homemade style impact mill. And inside there is a drum with 3 or 4 bars coming off of it that have steel hammers that spin at about 2,000 RPM. So as those 1/4 inch rocks drop into there, it hits the beater bars inside there, it gets thrown around, and it pulverizes it into powder.
Right.
And that has an output that goes right into, a bucket. And then you can take that over and we pan that out. And that's really what we use as a test type of a piece of equipment. And I think Don got it for like $800, which is a steal.
Incredible.
Gosh, if you ever see one of those that's got a jaw crusher and an impact mill mounted on a trailer, and you can get it for under $1,500 or even I'd probably paid $2,000 for it.
Right.
I would just buy it.
Yep.
So that gets you through kind of the testing phase. You can either do it by hand. Hell, I know guys that take it into their garage and put it into a burlap sack and hit it with a 10-pound hammer all day long and pulverize it that way. Any way that you can get to where you can see if there's visible gold in there. The problem with that method is you can't determine really based on that a really super small sample if it's commercially viable, if it's viable. And realistically, when we talk about OPT, ounces per ton, 1/4 ounce per ton is really we'll walk away from a 1/4 ounce per ton personally, and there's guys out there that I know mine all day long on 1/4 ounce per ton. We don't. We have a little bit smaller mill and stuff, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but we're looking really more into the, at least a 1/2 ounce or, really preferably an ounce or more per ton. And we're very fortunate, at least in the last couple of mines, that are paying much higher than that. And so you get a return on that.
It depends on your ore. If you can get a whole bunch of quarter ounce per ton ore out in a hurry and get it to a mill, and it doesn't tear your mill up too bad. It's all about the operating cost. If you can, lots of people do it at a 1/4 ounce per ton profitably. But the ore we have up here is so hard, it tears up equipment.
Well, and 1/4 ounce is still decently profitable. I mean, you're still able to. I mean, is that a good enough opinion to say so? Is that something that
it can be?
There's just a million variables. So, like for us, we're only having to transport the ore about 2 miles. So the mine to the mill is 2 miles. If you're talking 60 miles and you're pulling out 10 tons, you're going to need a dump truck, and then you're going to have to use diesel, and you've got to find some way to put the material into the dump truck. And so that's the thing, is it's so much larger scale if you really, really want to get into it. Now, we have a relatively small operation. We run typically just a backhoe, like a 420 size, which isn't small. What's that thing weigh? 27,000 pounds or something. So it's not giant. But you know what? It'll pick up, a ton of material in the front bucket, and you can dump it into a trailer, a dump trailer, or a dump truck, or whatever you want. But I guess going back to Jerry's point here is, and it's a really valid point, is a lot of these times, guys, if you find a Lode deposit from the 1830s all the way back to 1850, those guys they couldn't see anything, and so a lot of times they threw really good ore onto a tailing pile. And I mean, good God, if anybody has seen us and what we post on Facebook about the Screamer mine, there's your example right there. I mean, it's just astounding, the gold that we
like that.
I mean, you find rocks like that are worth $5,000.
Oh, my hands are so dirty. Jeez Louise. Those are working hands, guys. Just heads up. Those are working hands.
But so let's say that, and a lot of times the old timers, especially pre-war, and in the 30s and the 40s, they walked away. They were actively mining, and then the government actually shut them down. And for some reason or another, maybe they got killed in the war. I mean, who knows what happened? They left high-grade ore stacked up in piles, and it sat there forever. And so, at least 80 years. And if you can find that and crush it, you can make a hell of a lot of money. So that's really the difference between lode mining and placer mining is really the scale is much bigger, but the return that you can get is tremendous, especially if you get good equipment, you got a good mine, and you've got an ore body that'll last for a while, that you can actually pull a lot of ore. We got all excited last year. We found all this damn gold, and it lit the freaking Knudsen bowls up, which we'll talk about in a second here. And then the damn vein, we kept chasing it. Then it rolled and went straight the frick down.
Oh, geez.
We dug down about 60 feet, and we just couldn't go any further. And the other thing that you have to go tunneling almost vertically.
Yeah.
And think about that and how dangerous that is. And then, you're not able to pull out 10 tons a day unless you've got a crew and you're really doing a lot of blasting, and on and on and on. So we don't actually do any blasting. If we do, we use the Sierra blaster, which works pretty well. We try to do as much mining from the surface as we can.
Is that blaster? I just wanted to ask real quick, because there's been a few people that I've noticed either on YouTube, on Facebook, they've asked about alternative ways to be able to blast through rock. So is that a secret that you guys are willing to give up? Or is that something that they'll just have to figure out better methods to do so?
Sierra blaster is not heavy duty. Let's just leave it at that.
Right.
We did a video. We actually had Dana and Aaron, and Dana is the one that actually created the Sierra blaster, from his mind to conception to marketing. And it is a phenomenal piece of equipment. We obviously own one.
Well, we got that pocket we're going to pull out with it. So.
And what the Sierra blaster is, and you don't need an ATF. You don't need a blasting permit. You don't need to go through blasting. There's a long process that you have to go through in order to blow crap up with dynamite.
Right.
Those type of agents. But a Sierra blaster drills a hole about that size, so it's about a 10 millimeter hole, or it doesn't drill it. You drill it, and we use a small DeWalt.
Like, wow, that's an awesome tool.
We use a small DeWalt electric roto hammer drill. I mean, like $200, pretty cheap, S series. But anyway, and we have bits. Sierra Blaster sells them. We have bits that range from 12 inches to 3 feet. And you drill down with those drill bits, and then Sierra Blaster makes it's a 375 cartridge, and it's contained in plastic, and it's got 2 wires that come out of it. And so you drill a hole, you blow all the dust out, and then you push that 375 cartridge down in there and leave the 2 wires hanging out. And the head is about that big around, and it's stainless steel, and it's about that thick. It's heavy, weighs a couple of pounds, and it's got a steel rod that has a slot cut in it. It's actually just threaded, like all thread, but they cut a groove in it that you run the wires out, and you push that down until it stops on top of the 375 cartridge. Then you hook your 2 wires in the top of the Sierra Blaster,
Right.
and then you run a cable, which it's part of the Sierra Blaster system. You run that outside, and then you basically just hook it up to a battery. Once it gets electricity to it, it sends it down the cable, and it explodes inside there. Because that's such a tiny hole, and you have this enormously heavy steel head on top of there, like when you're placer mining and stuff, we're blowing up boulders, you'll put another heavy rock on it to contain it. That charge all that energy has to go somewhere, so it cracks the rock. And we've had boulders, the size of dinner tables, that we've cracked in half drilling 2 holes.
Jeez.
So it's incredibly powerful.
It works.
Is there something different that you can do? Oh, I'm sure that there is.
I'm saying as far as what's the price point for one of those?
They're I think I paid $2,000 for it, maybe $2,200 for a 2-head system. But we were at the Vegas Gold Show, and I won $2,500, and so I just went and bought one. So I didn't. And that was about, I don't know, probably 6-7 years ago. But anyway, it's a really handy thing. We used it actually in the Lode mine, and Dana and Aaron, when they came down, we shot that in another mine that Jerry and I have. We went inside there, drilled it. We put hooks in the ceiling, and so when the heads blew out, they don't go flying everywhere and bend up. They just kind of suspend. And it worked really well. We blew down big sections of the quartz vein, and in that mine, we had about a 2.5 to 3 foot thick, really bull quartz vein. And on the hanging wall really is where all the gold is. But we blew the bull quartz vein down just to show how powerful it was. And I think we only drilled 2 holes. It's on our YouTube page. But the Sierra Blaster works really good. We've also been around dynamite with Dave Rabioff. He's got with Gold Bay, a real close buddy of ours. Dave has the Colorado mine, and he drills big holes. He's got a jack leg and drilling big holes. And because he's licensed and he's been trained in using explosives, he's got this kind of, it looks like Play-Doh. It's putty. It's really, if you breathe it, you get a headache. So I don't think you should be breathing it. But anyway, you stuff that down in there, and you basically put,
a charge to it.
Yeah.
An igniter type of a thing into it. And then we went out, and he let me actually flip the switch, and he used some plastic explosives first. And it was like, dude, wow, that was pretty loud. And then we went back in, and we didn't get everything knocked down that we wanted to.
Right.
So I drilled some more holes, and these were a lot bigger holes. These were about, I want to say we were using 1.5 inch bit. And he stuffed all this crap down inside there, and he goes, "This is the dynamite." And so we went standing outside of the mine shaft, and when I set that off, I felt it in my chest, and I was outside. It was so remarkably different. The power in that versus the plastic explosives that were. I mean, it was just like, dude,
that's fun. That would be fun. Just to experience that. Yeah.
The wall right down into the middle of the floor. And I mean, this thing was probably like 8 feet long, 4 feet tall, and 3 feet wide. It was exactly what we wanted to knock down, and it knocked it right down. So,
wow.
But, to get a blasting license, Jerry, what was that? It was a couple-year process, wasn't it?
Yeah, you got to basically apprentice under a licensed person.
Yeah, it's funny. I asked Dave about the apprentice thing, and he said that isn't. Maybe it's not a requirement anymore, but he didn't believe that was actually required now. But it's a good question, really. That you could pose him, Shaw, and just ask him, what the procedure is to get that.
Right.
But
And with the Sierra Blaster, I just wanted to ask before we jump off the subject, what is the legalities with using that? Is that considered? It's not. Wow, awesome.
Yeah, Dana went to ATF and they signed off on it and said no, there's no blasting license
Needed.
required for this, because it literally is, it's a 375 caliber size. That's the charge. Now it's not encased in steel or anything like that. He can encases this in its plastic. It's, I'm sure, proprietary. I'm sure he's got a patent on it. He's a genius, by the way. But anyway, and it's just ATF looked at it and went, no, we have no issues with this, and so you don't need any type of a permit.
That's awesome. And then you could just purchase the cartridges, I'm assuming, through their website and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're really good about it. I mean, it's just a phone call, and heck, I've got a lot. We bought a pretty good chunk of them a number of years ago, and there's an important thing if you're going to go out and get a Sierra Blaster. Let me give you one piece of advice here: buy about 20 drills.
Yeah,
and I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
don't just go and use one drill bit. We have a 30-second rule. So we'll lay out 10 drill bits wherever we're drilling that hole, and we run for 30 seconds. You take that one off, you set it down and let it cool. Take another one, drill, 30 seconds. We never burn up bits that way. If you try to drill one hole continuously, you just ruined your drill bit.
Yeah.
We haven't replaced a drill bit in a couple of years because that's how we do it.
That's a good tip.
Burn up real fast. And when you're drilling into hard rock like quartz, they heat up really, really quick to the point where you touch it, it will literally just melt your skin.
Blister your finger. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of want to go back to really the equipment. Let's break it down into like small scale, medium scale, and large scale.
Right.
So, and we're not really going to focus much on large scale because we don't large scale mine. That's the kind of stuff that you see the big mining companies with, that they're driving dump trucks that you could put a school bus in the,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we don't really, as AMRA, we don't support the large scale miners because they actually don't support the small scale miners, and which really, they can pay off politicians. We can't. So we're not going to focus on that. But the medium scale, and we're probably at the medium small scale, we have the ability probably to process about 10 tons of ore a day, although we've never, ever once processed 10 tons.
Right.
We could. We just never bring that much back and run continuously. The other thing too, so on the medium scale, we have what's called a Keller mill, and it was one that we've got a friend of ours, Dave Keller. He's got an engineering and fabrication and design and this shop in the South Bay, believe it or not, of California, in the heart of people that hate mining. He's got this business. But we ran into him up on the mountain. He's got a cabin kind of near the mine, and he was intrigued by what we were doing. And he's like, well, I could build one of those. And so I kind of talked to him, and we drew up basically a design. And then about 6 months later, he calls me. He's like, hey, man, I built this thing. And we don't have power up there, so we have to run everything off of either a generator or we run gas motors. This has got about an 18-horse Honda motor on it. And what it is imagine if you took a 55-gallon drum and just scaled it down a little bit to about a 40-gallon drum. But it's, 3/4-inch thick steel, Jerry?
Jeez.
Yeah.
So that's shaped like a drum, and inside there we've got a couple of beater bars. And right down the middle of the drum is a shaft, and it's a big shaft. It's about that big around. It has a couple of different brackets on it that has what we call hammers, and they're about 3 inches wide. They're an inch thick and maybe about 2 inches in depth. And they're only about, that long. So, they kind of sit like that. and there's 6 of them on either side of that bar. There's a flat plate, and we have 6 of them hanging. They're offset. So when we fire up that big 18-horse Honda motor, that goes to a gear drive and everything else. And when you kick that Honda motor up full power, that thing spins inside that drum at over 2,000 RPM. Now, those tool steel that we use, it's actually Mangaloy. And Mangaloy is, as far as I know, it's one of the hardest metals that you can still weld on. And it's supposed to get harder as it hits stuff. So those hammers spinning at 2,000 RPM get fed by a jaw crusher. And here's an example, guys. If you look for something, you will find it. We have an 1888 that's built in 1888 Risden jaw crusher built in San Francisco. It was laying in a field about 20 miles from the shop up there for 50 years. Just laying in a field, and the guy's like, "Hey, if you want it, $50, come get it." Right on.
Jeez.
So had to take a winch and everything, and the thing ain't light. It weighs over 1,000 pounds. And it's got great big cast iron wheels on it. We drug it up into a trailer, and it took me over a year to just get it apart because those old square head bolts and nuts and everything. We finally got it apart. Cleaned it up. They don't have any bearings or anything in this. It runs off of what's called babbitt, and that's just basically a lead sheath that has a little groove in it, and you just drip oil on it, and that keeps that lubricated. That sucker, we've had it for, I'm going to say 10 years. Haven't had to do anything to it. It runs like a champ. They built things to last back in the day, but that was $50. And what that does is it's got a kind of a V opening in the top, and it's small. It's only about like that. But we can feed, rocks just a little smaller than a basketball into that, and it chomps about 200 to 240 RPM. It chomps. And at the bottom of that V, it doesn't actually come together. It leaves a 1/4 of an inch gap. So you take that basketball-sized rock, and it chomp, 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 chomp. Everything that falls out the bottom of that goes down a chute right into that big impact mill. So dude, it is loud as heck. It sounds like a jet engine running, but that's it. So all we have to do basically is feed the top. And that chomps everything down into 1/4 inch minus. That drops down into the impact mill. That turns everything into powder. And the output at the bottom of the impact mill, it literally is powder, guys. We have a very small screen that's probably less than, 1/8 inch or something, Jerry?
Yeah, I think it's 8.
So that drops down all that powder, and that's where we actually introduce water, because if we run water inside the impact mill, it just gums it up and it'll freeze everything up, and then nothing works. So that drops into basically irrigation pipe below the mill, where we introduce water because it's all on a recirculation system, and it turns into what we call a slurry. And it's basically just like if you mix up chocolate milk, it becomes a slurry. That goes into a reverse centrifuge. Everybody's probably seen the gold wheels out there. This is a gold wheel that is shaped like a bowl that spins backwards. That's basically the best way I can explain it. And anyway, they're Knudsen bowls, and so that slurry drops into there, and hell, they're probably, if you put your arm in there, it goes clear to your elbow underwater. So all the lighter stuff is forced to come out the top. That goes out a pipe. We actually have 2 of these Knudsen bowls. It's kind of a redundant system. And so about 99% of the gold gets trapped in the first bowl, and then we get some heavy blacks, what we call heavy
sulfides,
in the second bowl, in which are sulfides. And anyway, and that's kind of trapped in the second bowl, and we'll talk about the crushing system on that. And that's basically our system. Then it goes out of a pipe, and it goes into, we have a 2-yard dump hopper that all of the quartz that we crush ends up in there. And do we lose gold? Yeah, a little tiny bit. We've actually found one piece of gold in that dump hopper once, and but for the most part, it's pretty clean, and so that's kind of what we call our medium small system. We could run about 10 tons a day. Here's the thing, guys. Even with that high powered mill, if we run 10, it's probably about 20 tons that we run through there. We have to take the mill apart, take those hammers, the heads out of there, and we have to hard face them because
Right.
though it's mangaloy and it's actually harder than quartz, it is astounding. You'll pull them out and there's that much of that is literally gone, and it's
Wow.
in the newts and bowls.
Yep.
You'll see it when you pan it out. But so that's a medium size operation that we run, and it's a lot of thought, a lot of engineering that we kind of had to put into it. How much water flow to get the right slurry, to get the right flow on the newts and bowls, everything else, and then I'm sorry, go ahead.
How many, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but a question happened to pop up. How many years did it take for things to finally be to the point where they're at? And how much time and effort and investment, so instead of getting into all that, we'll just say how many years did it officially take until you guys, figured out the down pat system, so to speak?
Well, it was several years. Really, to get the whole this mill up and running, and we're very, very happy with it. We've even put a cover over it now. We've got a metal roof over it, so it stays dry, and we can run in the rain. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to say about 2 years for the system that we have. I could tell you what it would cost if you had to go and buy all of that stuff,
Right?
versus what I paid for it, because finding a freaking jaw crusher in a field and paying $50 for it, you're gonna, for a jaw crusher like that, you're probably gonna pay $1,000.
Right.
For an impact mill, this is a larger impact mill. It's not, it's even bigger than most of your Stutenroths and things like that.
Yeah.
You're looking from new, you're looking at probably well over $20,000.
Yeah, but I can't find a chipmunk for less than $2,000.
That's a little tiny jaw crusher.
Yeah.
So I had one more question to ask real quick, Shannon. This is for both you and Jere. Once you've established getting a load claim and you starting to get equipment on your property, and so on and so forth, what are some of the things that you guys can personally say that you've had problems with or frustrations with, or things that?
There's a number one, and that's sulfides. If it's so,
Right.
We should really just do the Geology 101 thing right now so people kind of understand. So a long time ago, we're talking about tens of millions of years ago, if not a billion years ago, the land was relatively flat. And that's really why you have a lot of the layering and stuff. And hell, you can go in Arizona and find seashells, for crying out loud. So you had a lot of layering. Now we have here in California, we've got what's the Pacific plate, it's called subduction, is pushing under the Sierra Nevadas. And that's pushing the mountains higher. Now, we can't actually see them grow, but if you had a camera that you could time lapse it for the last, 500,000 years, those mountains are getting pushed up, and it's because that Pacific plate's pushing underneath it. So what happens with that is that pushes up, it creates all of these angles in these different geology layers. And so you walk into, we have, I'm not going to name the mine, we'll just call it Charlie. So if you walked into the Charlie mine, everything's tipped in there at about 47 degrees. You can go north up into Angel's Camp, and like at the Screamer mine is about 55 degrees. And then you go a couple of miles that we had over at Mud Pigs, and that mine was, running at 6 degrees. It's really weird. There was something really weird that happened at Mud Pigs. But so that's really how you get all of those angles. And the gold is typically on either what's called the footwall or the hanging wall. So imagine that you've got this quartz vein coming down like this. This is the hanging wall because it overhangs the quartz vein. This is the footwall because it's under it. So that makes sense. The farther you go underground in a lode mine, the more you're going to encounter sulfides. And I'll let Jerry give you the definition of a sulfide in just a second. But we don't mine mines that have a lot of sulfides, and because the sulfides will lock up the gold, you'll never see it. You have to do a whole lot of things other than just crushing and panning out in order to get your gold back out. You're talking about acid leaching or roasting and
so chemical processing.
We're not interested in doing that. So Jerry, give us I'm putting him on the spot.
I don't know if I know what the definition of a sulfide is. I can give you examples of sulfides.
Okay.
Sulfides are sphalerite that we ran into over last year, which is a sulfide. Some of the magnetites are sulfides.
Pyrite.
Yeah, pyrite can be. And all these they're different minerals, is what it boils down to. They're all heavy minerals because they contain a lot of gold. So, but what it does is it locks up that gold and makes it very hard to capture. For the small scale guys starting out, you don't mess with sulfides. Your pay is going to be in the free gold. And you could easily identify the free gold by crushing a sample and find it. Now you're probably going to be looking at when you crush a sample and it's got free gold in it. There's probably going to be sulfides in there too, in the heavies, and they're typically a black mineral. Depending on the area, some are more common in some areas than other areas. But what we do. Is most of our sulfides end up, we're fortunate not to have a lot of sulfides in this deposit, but the sulfides end up in the second bowl, and we just save them. There's an outfit in Nevada that when you get a ton of sulfides, you send it to them, and they recover the gold out of it for you. That's the simple way to deal with sulfides.
Yeah, and they don't charge a whole heck of a lot. It was like,
No.
what was it, 15% or something like that?
And no, it wasn't a percentage. It was a flat rate, which is crazy. So if there's an ounce of gold in there, you get it back. If there's 1,000,000 ounces of gold in it, you get that too. So it's a flat rate per ton.
Wow.
So with sulfides, especially here in California, you're not going to be able to roast those here because of EPA standards and clean air and all that kind of stuff. And, and to be honest with you, it is pretty damn dangerous. And, if you're using, cyanide leaching and things like that, I don't know if California, I don't believe that they allow that here. It would surprise me if they do. But, in Nevada, Arizona, you could drive from Barstow to Bakersfield, and you can see examples of things that they're doing out there with some of those big mines. But the thing is, guys, is that you're talking about a lot of processes that you have to go through that can actually be pretty costly. So what Jerry said there really applies to what we do. Is we deal specifically with free gold, and there's a lot of places in America that have really good lode deposits that have a lot of free gold. Arizona is obviously one that comes to mind. We've got some buddies up in Idaho that are mining in North Idaho that are doing pretty good, although they have a lot of rare earths and things like that. But the guy that our buddy there, Ron, is he's like Stephen Hawking smart. And I'm not saying that lightly. He really, truly is. He's created all these different processes to extract each individual mineral, and it's It's pretty crazy. But all through the mother lode of California as well, there's some really, really good lode deposits. And, it's taken me the better part of about 20 years to find those. I shouldn't say that. It took me about 10 years to find them, and then add a couple more years to get a facility in order to process that. But
Right.
Farther you go underground, the chances of really having sulfides goes up every single step that you go down underground. But there's a lot of, you look at the Colorado mine, Vorobyev, and I hope you get him on the show.
Yeah.
He's a character, and, he's got an enormous amount of experience lode mining. I mean, probably 25, 30 years. But Dave, when we go into the Colorado, you're 200 and some feet down underground, and if he doesn't crush anything anymore, he's got the facility to do it, but he doesn't. He goes after those pockets,
Right.
A lot of free gold, and it's amazing crystalline gold. It's some of the most beautiful gold I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And some of these things are huge. I mean, you see the size of my hand right here.
Yeah.
I have held pieces of gold that he's pulled out of that mine that won't fit in the palm of my hand. They're that big. It's giant.
Absolutely insane. Yeah, he had one called the Dragon, the Bearded Dragon, if I remember right.
Yep.
That thing was just absolutely gorgeous. And 200 feet down, I mean, when you sit back and you think 200 feet from the surface,
Yeah.
that's quite a ways down. That's,
He's got, it's 3 levels, and we were on the lower level at that 200-foot level. What he's doing now is he's knocking the ceiling down and tying into, and he's taken all the gold out of that, and he's tying into the tunnel above him. And so eventually the floor of level 2, he's standing on, and everything else is buried. But an interesting thing about that Dragon piece of gold, and it was small, it wasn't very big. It weighed about 30 grams. So it was just shy of an ounce of gold.
right.
You know what he sold it for?
I had an estimate. I know it was pretty up there, pretty far up there.
Well over 6 figures.
Yeah, I was going to say it was over. I didn't want to quote it, but now that you said something, yeah, it was well over $1 million. That's for sure.
6 figures because it was crystalline and it was shaped like a dragon. So we keep hoping that we're going to find something like that.
Well, that's the thing with Dave. We had a podcast with him a few months back, and the guy is just down to earth. He's an awesome guy, and when you get to really know him, he's just one of those people that you love to have around you. That's the thing. We'd love to get him on another podcast, as me and you were talking about, Shannon, with a few other subjects. We'll get into that toward the end of the podcast. But yeah, great guy. I mean, he's been finding some phenomenal stuff over there.
So getting back to what we were talking about, so sulfides are something that we avoid like the plague, just because it's, who wants to crush all their stuff up and then not know what's in it and send it off to Nevada and go, oh God, I wonder what I'm going to get back. Now you can take those sulfides and you can send them. We've got a guy up in Idaho. His name is Chris Christopherson. You can find him on the internet. But you can send that to him, and he fire assays those. So he'll take a weighted sample, and let's say that it's 2 ounces of this sulfide, allegedly, gold-rich ore, and he'll fire that. And I think Jerry talked about this a little bit in the previous podcast. Jerry does fire assays too. But he does them for free for everybody. Just call him.
Yeah.
Put him on the spot like that, Shannon. You're probably getting a call this evening. No.
Well, it's good to have a buddy and a partner that, can do that, and he's got a kiln. But anyway, so you can send it up to Chris Christopherson in Idaho. He'll fire that. He's really quick. You get it back. You get the results back in a week. Typically, it's, like less than $100, but it gives you a breakdown of ounces per ton.
Right.
And then you can make an informed decision about, hey, do I continue to mine this and stockpile all these sulfides and then send them to Nevada and have them processed? Can I make money at it? Just in my experience, it doesn't matter how good you are at math or how good you are at planning and everything else. Whatever you think it's going to cost you, double it. it always happens that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of the way things go. But to get a medium, small to medium size mill site, and that's you need a lot of tools. You need blasting equipment, Sierra Blast or whatever you're going to use, or get a blasting license. Then you need a decent jaw crusher. You need something to move the ore around with, so you probably need a backhoe or a bobcat or something like that. We custom built basically a feed hopper for it, and that was an old diesel tank. That was, I remember it was 77 inches long because that's what I was looking for. We mounted that on a trailer, so we can dump about 2 yards into that feed hopper, and that feeds the jaw crusher. And then everything else is automated. So we can bring all this ore back, and we could put Sparky, we can put Don right at the top, right there at the jaw crusher, and he feeds that all day long. We can actually be out mining, pulling more ore out, and that's a one-man operation. You're up for a few hours until you're tired or you run out of ore, shut it down, and then everything that is left in the Knudsen bowl, then you just take over and we pan out.
One thing that I wanted, I'll go for it, Shannon. I'll let you finish. Go for it.
We do have some sulfides, guys, that we deal with, and it's predominantly what Jerry had mentioned earlier is sphalerite, and it's zinc. They have zinc mines and stuff, and although it's not valuable enough and we don't have enough of it to really even care about it, the reason we care about sphalerite is because it's a sulfide and it's got gold in it. So we take and we kind of just stockpile it, but we also have what's called a mauler. And these are the coolest damn things. We actually managed to score 2 of these. One of them is on an electric motor, and the other one we just have sitting on the bench. We haven't decided what to do. We've had a lot of people offer to buy it from us, but we don't sell that. So it is a cast iron bowl, and I'll show you. I'll back up here. It's about that big around, so about the size of a large Tupperware bowl, and it's about maybe that deep, and it's made out of cast iron. And it's smooth on the bottom, except it's got kind of a cone in the middle. And what sits over that are these 3 cast iron heavy round balls that are on a shaft. That goes to an electric motor, and those 3 little balls just sit and spin really, really slowly inside this cast iron bowl. And we take the blacks predominantly out of the second bowl, our second capture bowl, that we know are sulfides, and they're probably sphalerite that's carrying gold. We throw that into that mauler, and with just about that much water, just so it covers the, maybe an inch higher than the material, and we just throw some mercury in it, and we just grind that stuff up for, we let it run for maybe an hour and a half, and then we dump it out into a pan, and typically, and we've had some really rich sulfides that, we pulled 2 ounces out of a small baggie that's, only that deep in sulfides. You get a couple ounces out of that.
Right.
So, but we use a retort system that actually saves the mercury. So we don't, anything that gold and mercury, when those come in contact, they're just like magnets. They're going to stick. And anyway, really well, but you can't do that on a large scale.
Right. And that's one of the things that I wanted to mention was, once you have your system set up and you're able to extract the gold, all those byproducts and all those other things, you got to figure out what to deal with, whether you're going to store them, whether you're going to, and if you're, 5 to 10 years down the road and you're in continuous production each and every year, it's going to start to add up, and you're going to have to figure out something to go ahead and do with that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, the what you guys are planning on doing with it once you guys reach a ton, so on and so forth. I mean, that seems like the most viable option to do that, especially if you're dealing with a lot of sulfides.
Yep.
Right?
One of the things that, for those that know me personally and have seen the things that we've posted about the Screamer mine, and it's a buddy of ours that has a mine up out at Angels Camp, the old timers had really, they didn't have the technology that we had, metal detectors and things like that. So we've been metal detecting the pouring piles up there, finding well, you showed the rock earlier. That doesn't do it justice on this screen, by the way.
I know. Yeah.
But and we've shown some of those slabs before that are just full of gold, and they're extremely valuable. You can have a rock the size of an orange that's worth $5,000 if you slab it up and make cabs out of it. Even more than that, we've had rocks that were more valuable than that. So, you know, that's another thing. I mean, we could talk forever about tailing piles and stuff like that, but the tailing piles will also give you an indication of what they were originally mining, you know, what they were chasing.
Right.
You know, they typically will separate out like bull quartz veins, meaning mostly just quartz without any mineralization, versus, you know, stuff that is actually mineral rich, which, you know, will have your reds and your blacks and, you know, all different colors in it. I have a buddy of mine, Brian, that used to go around and he would look at all these old maps of all these old mines, and he would go there and he would examine just outside of any tunnel that he found. And if he found rocks piled up on the outside, he would take those rocks back to his place, and he had a small Stutenroth mill jaw crusher, and he would crush it and, you know, and impact it, and then he would pan it out. And in one of those piles, he got about a 5-gallon bucket full of rocks that were stacked up right outside the door. I think he got 7 ounces out of. So what they would do back in the day is, imagine, you know, it's not unlike a lot of people today will go and hire some laborer from, you know, Home Depot out in the parking lot and say, your job is to wheel this wheelbarrow. And if I say high grade, you dump it to the left. If I say, you know, dump it, then you dump it off to the right. And, you know, Clem gets out there and goes, now, what did he say? Okay, you know, and that kind of stuff. And so he's actually done really well with stuff like that. As I mentioned, we found some pretty amazing stuff in the tailings at the Screamer mine. What's interesting about the Screamer is it's got over 2 acres of tailing piles.
Jeez.
About a 50-foot by 50-foot area so far. That's it.
You haven't even
out of about 100 tailing piles.
Haven't even scratched the surface.
No.
But so let's talk about a little smaller scale. Well, let me just tell you. So on that medium small scale, like what we are doing, you know, the mill itself is going to be about 20 to 25 grand, and I'm talking new prices. A jaw crusher, you know, a 6 or an 8-inch jaw crusher. I don't know what they go for new. You can find them on Facebook. We have a couple of friends of ours. Rick Beckner is probably the best, sells a lot of mining equipment. You can probably get a 6-inch jaw crusher for, you know, maybe $4,000 or something. So if you buy these things used, you could probably set up a mill. You know, I don't know about a whole research system like us. Even if you got things used, you're still looking at a, you know, probably an investment of $40,000 plus. Then you got to think about equipment. Are you going to run a Bobcat? Then you got permitting issues with Forest Service or BLM, blah, blah, blah.
Initial investment is going to be, you know, once you transition and decide you want to do a load claim, that initial investment, you're probably not going to see back for a minimum of 2 to 3 years. I mean,
yeah, it could be, unless you've got a really valuable deposit. And that's why sampling and assays and things like that are really, really important. And we know that the Stacy Nicole, which we haven't mined, all we've done is pulled out, you know, several hundred pounds. And this is a pretty extensive mine. It's got tunneling going everywhere, but there was one place in that mine that was, you know, all these samples went 1/4 ounce per ton, 1/4 ounce per ton, 1/3 of an ounce per ton, 1/3 of an ounce per ton, 6 ounces per ton. And
right.
Holy crap with that, man. So I went back in and actually pulled out several 100 pounds and crushed that, and it was
phenomenal.
remarkable. So you can get your return on the investment, but what I'm trying to do is to convince the listener here that this isn't a cheap thing for you to do. If you look for this stuff, you can find it. You know, if you go into, I mean, there's people that hoard this kind of equipment. We've got a guy up out of Kohlerville there that he's since passed away. This guy had like 5 or 6 jaw crushers. He had great big, kind of like the Mauler that we were talking about. These have train wheels in them, like 4 of them that spin around in this bowl that literally is bigger than my couch. And I don't know what they use to run it, but I mean, you could literally dump a ton of ore in there and grind it into nothing. But this guy, he was a hoarder, and he would never sell anything. I tried a million times to buy jaw crushers from him, and he's, I'm going to use that someday. Dude, you can't even freaking walk. When are you going to use this? You can't walk. But that stuff is still sitting at his house. He's passed away 5 or 6 years ago. Now his kids think that it's worth $1 million. They want to sell a jaw crusher for 10 grand. You can buy a new one for less than that.
That's the sad thing is a lot of the old equipment, like you're talking about, a lot of those old timers, they hold on to it because they got a sentimental aspect to it. They feel like they need to keep it for a reason, that tugs at their heartstrings. And so, unfortunately, just like you said, man, right on the point, that person passes away, and then the family gets a hold of it, and they think they got $1 million. And sadly, those old pieces of equipment that are tried and true, they never get to be refurbished and used. They sit there, and that's the sad truth about it. You can find them, like you're saying, I don't know as much as you know about finding those old pieces of equipment, but especially in California, I'm sure they're out there. All over the place.
I got a guy that we actually got a dump truck from. It was a 1964 International.
That's right.
$500 for a dump truck, and it ran good. Didn't have any brakes, but it ran good.
Yeah. $500, huh?
And it worked well too. Yeah, it'd been sitting for several years, but we got to kind of talking to him, and he owned a big bunch of land, but it was also a patented mine. And anyway, we're kind of poking around in this boneyard, and he had this big ass jaw crusher. It was a 12-inch. And anyway, he's like, well, I'd probably sell it. And so we jewed him down to basically like $2 grand for it, that we could actually have given him gold, and we probably could have got that. So
right.
I don't know. It's all about just keeping your eyes open and looking. Yeah. But there are guys, like I say, on the internet, and Rick Beckner is probably one of the most honest guys that sells used Lode mining equipment, and he sells it on Facebook.
Right.
It's called, his page is called Friends of Tolo, and we love that page because, good gosh, you can get all that stuff, but. So let's talk about really small scale. So super small scale would be like going out with a rock pick and a sandbag and chiseling some stuff out of, the wall, and going home and making a custom smasher. And you know what? Maybe you can get $1 gram or $2. That's
which is actually what you do when you're trying to locate a lode mine. So yeah.
And then to take that just to a little stage higher than that would be like a chipmunk, like the little 3-inch jaw crusher and a little mini mill like what we've got. I think a guy could make enough money using a mini mill like that in gold, if you were on a pretty good deposit, to probably fund getting to the next level.
Right.
That's kind of what we did, really, is that we found some really good deposits and, made some money and kind of upgraded into other equipment.
Well, and that's the thing is we have a few PB family members that, one guy that is just absolutely phenomenal in what he does is Elijah White. We had him on a podcast, and with the mine that he's in, I think he only goes 30 feet down, and he uses just a metal detector. And he'll go in there with a metal detector, and he'll find these 3 grammers, 2 grammers, half grammers, and he'll dig them out and pull them up, and, it's pretty profitable for him,
Right.
So there's so many different aspects with lode claims. And that's what blows my mind is because, you look at Dave, for instance, he has specimen gold that he's finding. It's far and few, but when he does, it's very profitable. Then you have Elijah, who is, metal detecting, going 30 feet down and finding these nice nuggets and making it profitable. Well, then you have the actual hard rock where you're crushing it in a ball mill, so on and so forth, and that's very profitable. So when you do transition to a lode claim, there's so many different aspects that play in part for the profitability of a lode claim, and that is You don't see too many people doing load claims, and if you do, like I said, they're all doing something different.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I think everyone is kind of an individual, and it's kind of about individual tastes, or maybe it's funds, or whatever resources that you have. But I built a rod mill. I built all kinds of things before, and I failed miserably. When I built a rod mill, it cost me actually quite a bit of money. I got some 2 and 2.5 inch solid steel bars that were about almost 3 feet long, and I built this big metal drum. And then I didn't realize that, man, it takes a hell of a lot of energy to turn that drum. Just the drum with the steel rods in there probably weighed 1,500 pounds, and I could never get it dialed in. And the amount of time and energy, and it took me weeks to build this damn thing. I could have went out and got something, used off of Buddy or something for probably the same price. That would have worked and made me money. Instead, I have steel rods laying behind the shop that
you'll find a use for them. That's for sure. I'm sure of it.
But I would highly recommend that you avoid any type of really, really deep mines because of the safety issues, and you're going to encounter sulfides. But one thing that Don did a lot before I knew Don is he would go into an old Lode mine with one of the battery powered shop vacs, and he would vacuum the floor out of the mine. Because if you think about it, let's say that you've got an adit. An adit is basically a tunnel, guys, that is kind of it's your entrance to the outside.
Right.
And so they're chasing the hanging wall along this adit for, let's say it's 200 feet. They're blowing all that stuff up, and in the process, you get gold flies all over in the air.
Right.
And where does it end up? It ends up on the floor that you walk on for the next 150 years. He would go in and clean that down to, every single little crack, and it can be extremely profitable doing that.
Right.
I've done it once, and we did okay, but I only cleaned a small portion of it. I just didn't have the patience for it. I just wanted to blow shit up. But to your buddy, is Elijah?
Yeah, Elijah White.
That's how we found the pocket in the mine that we're hitting right now, that we were actually out there running the dozer on today.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We had a buddy come along, and I'd been in there with my old White's metal detector before. I had never been in there with my new Mine Lab stuff.
Right.
But he walked in there, and in 5 minutes started just screaming signal out of this little kind of gap in the wall there, and we ended up chiseling that out, and good God, there was a pocket of gold in there. It wasn't solid gold, but it had a hell of a lot of gold in there.
Right.
In a pocket like that.
Wow.
So if you're in an area that's really well known for pocket gold, like the South Mother Lode from, say, Angels Camp down to Coarse Gold or something like that, was really well known, like the Colorado mine, the Mariposa County, Tuolumne County, Calaveras County, those counties are really well known for pocket gold where it's all visible. Not all visible, you'll still end up with sulfides, but you could go into those and metal detect with like a Gold Monster 1000. And if you get a signal inside of a mine and it's in the wall, you got a 99% chance that you got a chunk of gold sitting behind there.
Right. And that's what's crazy is there's so many different aspects that play into load claims and the type of gold that you can get out of them. Whether it's gold in quartz, whether it's, nuggets. It's just insane. There's so many variables that play into it. And when I see a lot of these guys, pulling specific pieces out, whether it be a specimen piece or whatever it may be, it absolutely blows my mind because there's so many different variables to load claims. And on that same subject, that I wanted to mention was the value, and we brought up Dave, for instance. It's a great example. If you're finding, specimen pieces that are more collectible than they are at spot price, then you can make a lot more money on those, and that's that plays into the part of, like I just said, the different variables with load claims.
Yeah. Well, the variables dictate your recovery method.
Right.
If you got all fine gold, you crush it all. If you got specimen gold, you got to be careful and chip, and cut. He has a rock cutting chainsaw that he cuts big chunks out to get it into, this specimen intact. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's, I'll give you a lesson learned story here is that when we, last year, when we were mining the Screamer mine for our buddy there, when we first found the deposit, it was with a metal detecting tailing piles, and it was shocking to us.
Yep.
And we could see the gold all through this stuff. Well, without thinking really that through, we immediately took it back and we crushed a very small quantity of rocks that had ounces and ounces of gold in it. And, without going, well, God, if we could have slabbed that or done what Dave does. Now, we have a little bit of crystalline gold. It kind of wants to be crystalline gold, but it really isn't,
But they're too fragile. They're very, very thin.
But we've had some rocks like the one I just put on the rock saw yesterday or day before yesterday.
Decided not to bring it for the podcast, so let's blame Shannon for that one.
Dude, I was in I literally got off the bulldozer, walked over, got in the truck, drove an hour and a half, took a shower, came, turned it on, and you were like, hey, everybody. So, I wish I would have, because I could have just grabbed this rock to show you guys that it was literally about that big around, and we face cut it right there, and there's a big glob of gold right in the center of it.
Yeah.
We knew that because you could tell by the sound that the monster was making around it that it was in the middle, because it'll scream bloody murder if it's on the outside. This was in the middle, but it screamed from every different.
Wow.
It really made a lot of noise, but you could tell it was deep. But we will, I think, I'm going to guess in the next week, we will find one of those big giant rocks like that. And I'm going to give it to Jerry, and Jerry's going to go and work his magic. And we're going to find out whether we acid eat the freaking quartz away. We're going to find out if we need to find out if it's all one structure or if it's in broken pieces inside there.
Right.
Well, the little ones that I've messed with so far, they're not very well connected, and I've had a few that were, halfway through the rock or whatever, but they're so paper thin. You start removing the rock, and there's not enough structure of the gold to hold it together itself together. So far we haven't run across any of those specimens.
I do have a picture of some of that.
Oh yes,
you posted that on the. You is that the same? No, that's not the same. You posted a post in PB today, and those things are freaking jaw dropping, man.
Yeah, this isn't the same. I cut this. I don't know, probably a week or so ago, but we cut a bunch more just over the last 2 days, I think, 3 days.
Oh, man, I'd love to have a cab on a freaking 18K necklace. 18K necklace with one of those cabs, man.
That would be cool.
Just gorgeous stuff over there.
So the small scale guys out there, I would really recommend, do your own smashing inside, but do not discount if you find piles of rocks outside of a tunnel.
Yeah.
Metal detect those. Go in, sweep out the freaking floor, vacuum it out. I think that you'd be shocked, especially if you know it was a good mine back in the day and you don't have all the money to buy equipment and, do all that kind of stuff or crush. Do those kind of things and then build up your capital to be able to go back in, then claim the mine, then start mining it and doing things like that. But the payoff, the payoff is incredible. If you get a good mine, you literally can become a millionaire.
Right.
Any day that you go out and mine it. All it takes is to find a pocket like what Dave Rabioff finds that, some of those palm-sized pieces like that are worth $1 million freaking dollars.
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
that in one day. You know, maybe take him a couple of days at his desk, chiseling the quartz away or cracking it away or whatever he does. I don't know. Whatever
You know how fun that would be. We can't lie to ourselves. You know how fun that would be just to be digging on one of them bad boys to really, bring out its true potential. That would just be holy moly.
Yeah.
Jerry
Dave's
won't let
got
me
some
do that.
videos. Dave's
Jerry
got
won't
some
let me
outs.
do that. I don't
Yeah.
have the patience, so Jerry would never let me do
Yeah.
something with Jerry. And I would
Yeah.
call him every 2 hours, dude, are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Yeah.
Take me a picture.
Yeah.
What does it look like? What do you got?
He'd have
Well-
a live camera. He'd have a live camera watching
Yeah.
you, Jerry.
Dave's got some new videos up, and it's and it's specifically addressing how he prepares these
I
I
specimens.
saw that.
And
I saw that.
some of them are amazing. He scared the crap out of me. He takes this chunk of quartz with gold in it and takes an oxyacetylene torch to it and heats the quartz up until it cracks off. I'm like, but, he's been doing it so long, he knows exactly how to do it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and that's the thing. A lot of the gold that is being pulled is just, it's fascinating how it can be sold as a specimen versus spot price, because spot price is spot price. It's never going to change. And when you go to sell it, and that's a whole different podcast, but when you go to sell it, you don't get that full spot price. You get a percentage taken off of that. When it becomes a specimen piece, now you have people that collect specimen pieces, and it changes the ball game with the price point that you can get out of that.
Well, and I hadn't really ever slabbed anything before personally. We just basically crushed everything because we were dealing mostly with small stuff.
Right.
But we took one rock about like this that we sent to our buddy Steve in North Carolina, and he slabbed that and made the cabs out of it. It was one rock that when the cabs were actually done, that rock in value of gold that was probably in it. What do you think was in that, Jerry? A half ounce, maybe?
Yeah.
The
In that neighborhood.
If you added up the cabs of what the owner of the mine got, was probably close to 10 grand.
Jeez, holy shit!
One rock. That's one rock about like this. It's
10 grand.
The size of a baseball. 10 grand.
Yeah, and that's the big difference between placer and Lode claims. Is placer, it's, you can find a decent amount, and there's folks that's found more than a decent amount. I don't want to go into the whole shebang with that, but with Lode claim, I mean, your profitability just skyrockets. If you find a very valuable quartz vein, and it changes the profitability from placer mining to Lode mining just inconsiderably.
Yeah, the thing that we deal with probably the most really is equipment wear and tear, breakdowns, and things like that. You start getting these wild ideas that, we could mine 5 days a week and 8 hours, 10 hours a day, we could crush 5 tons, and the next thing you know, you bust a belt, or a bearing goes out and then you can't find it and you got to order it online. It takes a week to get it, and whatever. And we've had all of those problems. The other thing too is if you get into that medium stage, is guys, you're going to have to, we deal with equipment that was made in the 1800s. You can't find that stuff on the internet. When you need a part for it, you can't find it. So you have to be able to engineer in your head what I need to do with this welder and these chunks of steel that I have out in our boneyard, and create and fabricate and
Right.
something in that manner. And so I would say realistically, my dreams of Lode mining were cut probably by about a third of what I thought the time that I spent Lode mining, simply because of that, or because of weather, or road gets washed out, or there's just a million different things. Shit, we got 2 feet of snow up here a while back, and so all those different kinds of things. But guys, I hope to hear from some people that decided to go out to a Lode mine and vacuumed the floor
Yeah.
Picture of what you find, because I think it's going to shock you.
I'm bringing a vacuum on our Meet the
Yeah.
Family road trip now. So thanks, Shannon.
When you come down here, bring a giant freaking. Actually, we'll run a generator out there, and we'll sit there and drink root beer and watch you vacuum the floor of our mine.
No,
We'll
we
give you,
got
our
a
standard
couple
percentage
ounces on
that
the
we'll
floor.
give you is 3%. So hey,
I was gonna say.
get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jerry will probably
there's a pile that's gonna come out before you get there because it's got a lot in it.
I'm basically just cleaning it for you now. That's for sure. Go for it. Go for it, Shannon.
Just one thing to remember, guys, that I want to drive home again too is about the tailing piles. Is that most miners never saw a single speck of gold until after it was all crushed and they got paid. In the 1800s, they never could see it because they didn't have the lighting and everything that we do. So don't underestimate tailing piles either.
Yeah,
big time.
There's guys that's all they do. They never go underground. They just rework whatever pile, whether it's a waste rock pile or a tailing pile or whatever on the surface. And every pile is worth investigating what values are in there.
And that's what's crazy too. Not necessarily just gold. You're talking gems. You're talking, there's so many different aspects when it comes to lode mines. I saw a few different folks that have YouTube channels, and that's all that they do. They get authorization and clearance from the owners, and they go up there and they look through the tailings piles, and they're finding just different gems and just insane freaking minerals. And they're not even stepping foot into the lode claim. They're just going over the tailings piles, So not only do you have gold, you have so many other minerals, rare minerals that are just in the tailings piles. Literally walk up to it and start going through it. It's absolutely insane. We're getting toward the end of the podcast, and I had something that I wanted to bring up before we go through some of the comments here. First and foremost, I wanted to, for all the people watching, what I wanted to do was ask Jerry and ask you, Shannon, 5 common, most basic tips that you could give somebody that is going to transition from placer mining into lode mining. What would be, and we'll start with you, Shannon, what would be the 5 most common tips that you would give somebody?
Wow. Let Jerry go first.
Jerry, go for it.
I don't know if I got 5, but I'd say just do your discovery well. And to do a discovery, it's not going to cost you a ton. You can literally go out to an area you're interested in with a mortar and pestle and a gold pan, and crush small samples from all over the dang place and see if there's any free gold in it.
But as a part of that, don't do what I did and put them all in a bag without labeling anything, and then you crush it and you got one sample that's really rich. You go, I got to go back and do it again.
Yes.
So what we do is we carry Sharpies in our backpacks, and we'll actually write right where we found the samples, and then we'll match that to the bag. I think that was Jerry's idea because I was too stupid to remember. But, I guess the thing that I would say, guys, is that there's a couple of resources. I mentioned those USGS books that are from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even the 60s. Right. And they actually sent out the geologic surveys to each individual county. And I haven't seen them for other states because I've never focused on lode mining in other states. But I know for Tuolumne, Mariposa, Calaveras counties, Stanislaus, some of these counties that I frequent, I found those books, and they're extremely rare. And on the back flap of those books, they're just a gray book, and they're about that thick, but it has a map. If the map is still there, it's supposed to be in the flap. I was lucky enough to find some of these books that still all had the mines on them, and you open up this map, and it's like 4 feet by 4 feet, and every one of these dots on there has a number. You could go inside that book, and it'll say, oh, it's the Calaveras 9 mine, and the strike was this, and on and on and on. you can search those on the internet and you can find those books for your county. I've seen them, and they range anywhere, depending if people know what they actually have. They'll go from $50 to $150. I got the one for my county where I mine, $1 at a garage sale.
Jeez Louise. All about doing your research, looking around. Yep.
It had the map in it. I keep that book in my safe, by the way. It's that valuable to me. But that's a really good resource. Your county, if you go to like our county in Mariposa, I went to the library there, and it's a really old county. It was one of the first counties. It used to actually be the biggest county. But anyway, they had a section in there that was specifically just mining, and there were some really old books, and there were family stories that had these mines, and I would read about those. And Don and I actually, from me reading a book in a library, were able to go out and actually locate the mine, and we knew everything about the mine just from that book. And so it was still under claim. We found it, but it's still actually under claim. Otherwise, we might have gone in and done some sampling in it. But there's a lot of different resources like that, and you can talk to locals, things like that, to actually put you in the right spot. But as far as the tip goes, if you've got your access to a Mine Lab Gold Monster 1000, I think is probably your best friend when it comes to tailing piles, even detecting the walls.
Right.
That's how we found the pocket in our mine that we've been walking past for over 10 years. Didn't even know it was there.
Right.
So if it wasn't for Wade coming in with the Monster 1000, we probably wouldn't have. Well, we probably would have found it eventually. But,
eventually, we would have.
A couple more years into the Lode claim process.
Yeah. I guess that would be the tip I would give, and that is to, before you go out and just start crushing stuff on a larger scale, like by the ton, make sure you know what you're crushing, that it's going to actually make some money for you, because it's really disheartening. Believe me, we've done this. We did this last year to go and crush 2 tons of ore and get, a fifth of a gram.
Yeah.
Jeez,
That's
Louise.
really disheartening. You're like, where the heck is the gold?
Did it go?
Well, it looks so good.
Yeah, but
it did too.
Actually, at the Screamer mine is a good example of hot and cold. Is you can find these orange size or grapefruit size rocks that are worth 5-10 grand because they're loaded full of gold. You would think that you could go, hey, let's just crush that whole tailing pile that these things are all sitting in. And so we did. We gathered up a ton of that and took it back, and it was all the best looking, highly mineralized stuff that looked exactly like the gold that we were finding in the rocks that screamed bloody murder. And what did we get out of that ton, Jerry? About a gram and a half.
Barely a smile. It was horrible.
We lost money by actually crushing it just because of the gas costs and equipment, wear and tear and everything else. And so you kind of have to understand geology, and that's the one thing that we didn't really talk about in this, because every mine's different. And you know what? It may be on the footwall. It may run in a spider vein, very, very small veins. We found extremely rich stuff that runs in veins that are, maybe that wide.
Half inch.
At one of our other mines that Jerry went and sampled, and it was about 25 feet underground in a tunnel. And you look at it and you go, well, how the hell do you mine that? Well, it's
how do you,
got a lot of gold, but how do you take out a vein like that when you got all this other slate and albitite and everything else around it? You just want that. You
right.
can't.
Right. No, that's we all, I think all of us appreciate that tip. I got a couple of questions that I'd love to go over with you guys now that we're toward the end of the podcast here. This one is off subject, but I figured I'd go ahead and show it. So Facebook user says, Jerry, are you going to be at the Gold Show in Phoenix, Arizona on March 12th to the 13th?
Good chance, a real good chance.
We got another.
Yeah, we're doing that show, aren't we, Shannon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now you guys just need to come down to the Puyallup show and come and do that show. That should be a pretty good one in itself too. You guys are like, too far
away. Is that
away.
on the schedule?
We did that show once before, and it wasn't real good for us. I mean, that's a long ways to go. Obviously, talking 2 states away, pulling the trailer all the way up there, and it's not like we sell a lot of wares. You know, we sell
right.
sweatshirts, and that's about it. But and we had 2 pretty decent claims up in Washington, and basically, without getting into throwing anybody under the bus, we lost those 2 claims, and we haven't been able to obtain any others since then. So if you run across some, bro, let us know.
Yeah, that's, we can get into a whole different ball game with Washington and the way things are going right now.
Without having somebody local there, it is hard to find a decent client.
Extremely tough, and that was one of the things that that I was talking to a few buddies about was, joining clubs in Washington. Some of the states you're going to want to join a club to get access to, claims and such. Washington and a few other, and I can't speak for other states because I don't know, is much harder when it comes to claims and such. And joining a club, that'll get your feet into the door on claims access and stuff like that. So, so hopefully we were able to cover that question. We got another one here. It says, and I'm pretty sure we covered this, but as a generic base, I guess you could say, for a price point, it says, what would be the cost to get a decent operation / equipment up and running for a load claim as far as the smaller end goes? What would be kind of a generic, I guess you could say, investment to get something like that up and running efficiently or decently?
Jerry?
Yeah, it's so variable. If you're going to buy brand new equipment, you're going to spend $100,000.
Yeah.
But nobody buys brand new equipment. So,
there's no need to buy good new equipment. Really?
No. And some of the I like the Stutenroth mills, and if you're in Arizona, you can find them. Right. So, they're a good design. They're local, actually, to Arizona.
I would say, realistically, Jaren, for a small scale, like a 6-inch jaw crusher, used one.
Most basic, yeah.
A used mill, even a Stutenroth, which is really a good mill, you could probably crush 5-6 tons a day, which is a hell of a lot. I mean, if you're a 2 or 3 man crew, you and a couple of buddies, that's a lot of ore to be crushing. You got to have some type of a collection system and then a way to process that, whether you run it across a shaker table, some type of RP4 or whatever it is, Newton bowls, Neff bowls, whatever it is. I think you could probably get away with just the equipment itself for $20,000, maybe 25. But then you need, are you going to get a Bobcat? Well, you can get a used Bobcat, but they ain't cheap either. Believe me, we've been watching. It's going to cost for any type of a tracked Bobcat. You're looking at probably $30,000 used, and that's like a really used one. So the costs really add up. If it's a hand, you're going to go in and hand pick and stuff everything out. I mean, just the Sierra Blaster probably costs you $25,000 or $2,500. So you need a quad, you need a trailer,
Could you comfortably say an investment of $10,000 to $15,000 would get you started?
Yeah, and what I'd like to here's one of my tips: find the deposit first. Find the deposit. Define how big it is. Define what process you're going to get the ore out. How much ore can you get out in a day? All of that stuff is going to determine what mill you're going to set up.
Your initial investment.
So my tip would be find a deposit first, and that'll help you narrow down what you need for equipment.
Right.
We never mentioned anything about core drilling.
Mm-hmm.
Core drilling would be phenomenal if you could afford to do it. We would love to do that on a couple of different mines that we've got right now, because we know, at least especially with mud pigs, that it's an extremely rich mine. But I think that we'd have to drill down probably 100 feet, maybe more, to hit the high grade vein. But then you actually have core samples. And if you find a really rich mine like that and you core drilled that thing, and you showed these cores that have literally visible gold all through them, you could probably sell that mine for $1 million.
Right.
But, it's going to cost you $100,000. Excuse me.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's the thing too. Obviously, the price point varies with core drilling, but core drilling is not cheap. Not cheap at all. It is. Yeah, I don't know I don't know what it was, but I was reading something along the lines that they go by a certain amount of feet, and stuff like that, and it's not cheap. How many feet they drill down. If you want, a 30-foot hole, you're looking at a decent investment just to get. If you have nothing that comes out of that, well, now you're $4,000, $5,000 already in. Excuse me, within your initial investment.
Right.
Well, that's kind of why you have to understand geology and everything else as well, where to drill, and understand where your strike is going, and basically where it's located and where you think that the best ore is going to be. But
so much more.
It's really, really expensive to core drill. I had a chance to buy a core drill a while back, and I didn't have the money, and I could have got it for about $5,000, and we would have. I mean, good gosh,
game changer. Yep. Let's see here. We got a few more comments here. Let's see. From Clueless Prospectors, he says Mount Baker Mining and Metals has some pretty cool setups.
Yes, they do. Really good stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, I would probably recommend the Mount Baker stuff on the same line of Stutenroth.
Yep.
Personally, I used to have a Stutenroth with a buddy, and when he moved away, he got to keep it, and I love that. But Mount Baker makes some damn good stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it because they have a complete setup. Their tables are outstanding. Their impacts are outstanding. Everything they make is really quality stuff.
That's awesome. We have one more comment here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up we got two more that I got to bring up here. First one, this was a while back in the beginning of the podcast from Mr. Flower Gold Wizards. He says in Wisconsin, it's a 1/4 ounce per crick, which I'm sure you're referring to creek.
Okay.
That's when we were talking about the placer versus Lode claim. 1/4 ounce. That's the thing with placer mining that I've noticed with a lot of individuals, especially with prospecting, buddy. I see so many posts that come through, and placer mining, you won't find a very big amount for the amount of dirt you run within a weekend. When you jump to Lode mining, it changes the game with how much gold you can find, and it's not an ounce or, a 1/4 ounce to an ounce. It's a 1/4 ounce to 5 ounces, 6 ounces, 8 ounces per ton, with what you guys got going on, so it changes that dynamic in such a night and day difference from placer mining to Lode mining, and so if anybody's watching this and wants to transition, first and foremost, get a hold of Shannon and Jere, because they'll steer you on the right path. Secondly, obviously, you're going to be making a decent amount of an investment to get into it. That's for sure.
The Screamer mine in Angels Camp, the high grade stuff runs about 65 ounces per ton.
Jeez Louise.
65 ounces per ton. That's over about $105,000 per scoop with the backhoe. But that's the high grade stuff.
Give me 2 tons.
Yeah, exactly. Getting to 2 tons is the chore.
Yeah. We got one more here. When we were talking about the blasting caps with the Sierra Blaster, Facebook user said you have to take a test before you can buy the 375 caps. Now,
You do actually. I
Okay.
remember doing that. It's just they do it when they sell them. It's just a simple piece of paper, and if I remember correctly, it was pretty easy test to take, but it was like 1 or 2 pages, and you just fill in the blanks, and I can't even remember what the questions were.
are
Honestly,
you going to blow up any buildings? No. Are you?
Yeah.
We got another one here from Shrimp Roads. He says, "Is there even any chance to find gold veins in Southwest Washington? Just seems to be abandoned mines. Very few people mine. I've actually never seen one person mining."
I actually grew up in the Willamette Valley, Oregon, so not very far from Southwest Washington. Although I never mined anything in Southwest Washington. We mined back in my day. We mined mostly around the Santiam River basin there. But I don't. There was one guy that we had met there. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was in the Southwest Washington area there, but he was dredging. He wasn't lode mining, but he did pretty decent. And I don't even remember what river that he was on, but he did pretty good. And then, of course, Washington's gone tyrannical on suction dredge rules and all this other kind of bull crap. It's always the political left that is trying to ban that stuff at the behest of Trout Unlimited. Those two groups are just, good gosh, and they never stop.
Well, and I could only imagine the type of hoops that you'd have to jump through, even if they still do allow it. The amount of hoops and fees and just the paperwork in itself to try to get a load claim established in Washington right now is not the time to try.
Well, I don't think that you would have that because it's not the state that really they can't really regulate. There's nothing that they can regulate because you're not polluting. You're actually, they could probably try to attack you on.
I'm sure there's going to be something that they would be able to bring up and try to close you down. I mean, I'm not going to speak for all of it because I don't know. I don't have knowledge when it comes to load claims in Washington personally, but with everything else going on with dredging and high banking in Washington, I'm sure it would be. I mean, do you really want to spend that amount of time to, get to that point where you actually get a load claim? And obviously, if you're finding a good deposit, then yeah, go right ahead. But what are the chances of that, and what are the chances that you're going to be able to actually get that claim situated, being able to do those things. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
So another pro tip, if you can, don't mill your ore on site. If you ship your ore to a private property, then you relieve yourself of all those federal regulations. And if you're on a piece of private property, it's typically going to be at the county level. Any regulation is going to be at the county level, which typically is quite a bit better.
That's a great tip. That is an absolute great tip. Great tip indeed. Well, I think let's see. I think we're good to go as far as questions go. We do have a few more comments. The one of the basic things that we've been bringing up is what David says: research all aspects. Can't stress that enough. That's for damn sure. Another one from David: takes money to make money. If you're getting into load claims, well, that's just the case. So, with that being said, Jerry, Shannon, I appreciate you guys doing this third episode. I didn't know if I was able to squeeze another one out of you guys and into your mining season, but
I don't know if everybody knows this, but Jerry is sitting in his vehicle on top of the mountain, creating a Wi-Fi hotspot because it's the only place he can get a signal because he's up at the mine right now.
with the generator running out back.
I'm all the way down to the Central Valley of California, but yeah, but I'll be back up there in the morning, and we're going to be back at it. But that's the kind of stuff that for you, buddy, we'll do anything, Jaren.
No, I appreciate it, man. And the more knowledge we can spread with the Lode claim and the placer claims, and the more knowledge we can get out there, the more it's going to benefit any individual that wants to go from a weekend warrior to something more. And that's what we try to promote. That's what you guys promote. That's what you guys back, is those people that want to get outdoors and get it done, so to speak, So I appreciate your guys' time. And Jere, I especially appreciate your time when you're sitting in the vehicle on the top of the mountain, man. Yeah. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure all the people watching right now really appreciate it.
Let me, if I could just do a little plug here for AMRA, guys, for those that don't know, American Mining Rights, we formed really out of frustration because the small miners had nobody to go to for really asking, questions or teaching them and all those kind of things. That's why we formed AMRA. And the way we fund ourselves is really through either donations or members. And the way we created AMRA is we have mining claims, and these are really good claims. We have in 7 different states now. We have, I think, 85, 87 mining claims in 7 different states. And so for a tax deductible $200, you become a member, you get unlimited access, you can take a friend, you go mine them, you can keep everything that you find. There's no other additional dues or, paperwork to fill. There's none of that crap. And you know what? You just go out and mine. They're all placer mine. And anyway, so they're all across the Western United States. And if you're interested in becoming a member, go to AmericanMiningRights.com. Click on the claim tab and take a look at all the claims that we've got there.
Yeah, and I actually have to add to that. A good friend of mine, James, is now an AMRA member, and he is head over heels to hit that Montana claim. And that was the first thing that he mentioned to me. He said, "Jaren, we're going over there this season." And I said, "You know what? Let's pack our bags. Let's get on over there and have fun." And the nice thing is you get a full identification card, giving you rights and access to those claims. So if anything goes awry or anything happens, you have that identification card that gives you that access. And then, the nice thing about that situation is you can contact Shannon or Jere directly on Facebook, and, within the hour, they'll get right back to you.
Yeah,
anything hashed out and situated for you within that hour. So, it's not like you're waiting 2-3 days or even a week for an email with a situation that you have on your hands. You're getting basically almost 24/7 access to AMRA to be able to take care of any of the problems that you're having with any of the claims that you're on that they own. So definitely jump over there. I appreciate you guys more than you can possibly know. That's for damn sure. I really, really do.
I'm looking forward to when you come down, man. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. We've tried to fit in so many different individuals in this Meet the Family road trip, and the 2 or 3 that I really look forward to is coming down to California for my first time. I've never been down to California, so coming down to California, seeing you guys, spending some time with you guys, having some fun, and then being able to go to southern Idaho. That's another big part that I really want to explore a lot. Idaho City, all the heritage over there. And, so I'm looking forward to it, man. Just don't give me too much of a hard time, Shannon.
We'll make you work, though, but you'll probably get rewarded.
Hey, I work like a dog. So you give me a shovel or a pick, and I'll be going to town. That's sure. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys. You guys have a good evening, and hopefully we can get you guys on another episode sooner or later. Months down the road, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of phenomenal things that you guys want to bring to the public's attention, and we have such a phenomenal podcast to be able to bring it to people's attention. So that being said,
reach out to me when you get Varabioff on there.
I hope Dave is actually not watching, because I want to surprise Dave and have the window pop up with Shannon on it, like we've done a couple times. It's a lot of fun. So,
cool. Right,
I appreciate you guys jumping on. Everybody watching, I appreciate you guys coming and spending your guys' time with us. With that being said, you guys have a good evening, Jerry, Shannon, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
See you tomorrow morning, Jere.
Take care.